Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for those of you joining us from home on live stream. My name is Andrew Dowd. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Ventura County Fire Department. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us here this evening and find out more information about fire safety and fire prevention. It's a very important topic for us, and we want to make sure that we're available to support this community in any way we possibly can. We've brought together a number of speakers here tonight to be able to address a wide variety of topics. We're going to be joined by PJ Gagahena, the city manager for the city of Moorpark, as well as Chief Tony Ochapeni, a division chief for Ventura County Fire Department, Fire Captain Nick Odnath from the Moorpark Police Chief, Ventura County Sheriff's Office, myself, the Public Information Officer for Ventura County Fire, Chief Joe Williams, who is responsible for our Wildland Division, Battalion Chief Joe Williams, as well as our Fire Marshal, Joe Morelli, and Fire Captain Pat Kelly, who's going to speak about the importance of lithium-ion battery safety. Since we have a number of people that may be joining us online tonight, what we'll ask is if you're watching remotely, if you're watching a stream either live or recorded in the future, you can send an email to us at piofire@ventura.org. That email we'll check tonight at the end of our presentations, and if there are any questions, we'll address them right away. But if you have a question days from now and you happen to be watching the stream, that email goes right to me and I'll be able to answer your questions. So thank you again for your inquiries, and thank you again for allowing us to be here and for presenting this information to you. I'd now like to welcome up City Manager PJ Gagahena.
Thank you and good evening. Welcome to those of you watching at home. The Fire Safety Expo is such an important event. Since our city's founding, we've had a strong partnership with the Ventura County Fire Department, Ventura County Sheriff's Office. So really excited to bring this information and share with our residents, because we know how important wildfire safety is to our community. And with that, hopefully you can get some really good information this evening that will help you prepare during an emergency, during an evacuation, and be able to address many safety hazards that may be in and around your home. So with that, thank you for attending this evening. Again, my name is PJ Gagahena, City Manager, City of Moorpark. And again, we encourage you to also contact the city if you have any questions regarding any of the topics tonight, and we could always refer those to the Ventura County Fire Department as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it on to our Fire Chief, Tony Ochapeni. Thank you.
Thank you, PJ. Good afternoon. As stated, my name is Tony Ochapeni, a Division Chief assigned to the Ventura County Fire Department, currently holding the position of the Moorpark Fire Chief. And my hope tonight is that we're able to answer some questions for you and provide some better understanding on the wildfire threat that exists within the city of Moorpark, the actions that we as your fire department, along with our partners at the Moorpark Police Department, are taking to not only be better prepared to handle these incidents, but paint a picture of how aggressively we handle these and the seriousness that we take when a new fire starts within the city of Moorpark or the surrounding areas of the county. When you talk about wildfire in Ventura County, there's really three critical components that play into large fire growth that we see. And unfortunately, many of us are not strangers to large fires here in the city of Moorpark and the surrounding areas. And I will tell you, it's not unique to just the city of Moorpark, but it is unique to this stretch of coastline in Southern California. And there's a variety of factors for that. And up here, you'll note the three that really play the largest role in the large fires that we see here in the county. Starting at the top, we'll talk about fuels or vegetation. We'll talk about the weather, and we'll talk about topography, or truly the landscape and the hillsides that exist here within the city and the areas that surround it. The unique thing about each of these is, of the three of them, one of them changes very rapidly. It changes seasonally, and it happens to be the biggest driver of large fires here in Ventura County, and that is the weather. And what's unique about the weather, not just in the city of Moorpark, but Ventura County and this portion of Southern California, is that we receive a anomalous wind event known as the Santa Anas. Many of us are very, very familiar with that. And I'll speak to you a little bit about that. So over here on the right side of the screen, you'll note this diagram. And this diagram is simulating what occurs when we are under a Santa Ana wind event here in the county. And you'll see up over here over the Great Basin, Four Corners area of the United States, you have a high pressure system that sets up. And down here off the coast of Baja, California, you have this low pressure system. And when you have that high pressure system that's pushing an air mass down towards the land, and you have that low pressure system that is rising, you get a very strong pressure gradient that moves that large air mass across the entire western United States. And as that air mass moves across that part of California and it works its way out here to the city of Moorpark, it heats up, it dries out, and it increases its speed. And that is why we are no stranger here in Ventura County to those significant Santa Ana winds, and why we can count on them almost every year. The next item I'll talk to you about is the fuels or vegetation. And though it doesn't change as rapidly as the weather does, it is a factor that changes seasonally and throughout the period of years that plays into the large fire growth here in the county of Ventura. When you look at the fuel that exists in and around the city of Moorpark, it's a native chaparral that's made up of a variety of species of plants that they depend on fire to sustain themselves over thousands and thousands of years. And generally, when you look at a fire return interval, or the amount of time it takes for that native vegetation to return after being burned, it's about 5 to 10 years. As such, those fuels and that vegetation has adapted to this sort of environment, and it's made up of really highly flammable oils that burn at a pretty high temperature, and they just burn really rapidly when we get fires. And so it's important to understand that when you look in and around the city of Moorpark and the surrounding areas, that is predominantly what you'll see. You'll see light flashy fuels such as grass, and you'll see this native brush component that burns really hot when it catches fire. And then lastly, the one item that really never changes is the topography. And if you pay attention to maps, or you look at, for example, a Google Earth image, what you'll notice is that the ridge systems that run through this portion of Ventura County, specifically through Moorpark, run in a northeast-southwest direction, which happens to line up exactly with our Santa Ana winds, thus increasing the propensity to see those winds surface and to have fire move fairly rapidly when we do get a fire under these east wind events. The next thing I'd like to discuss is the preparatory actions that we take when we anticipate coming underneath one of these wind events or any sort of predicted fire behavior. And what I would tell you is in the several days leading up to a wind event like this, we are constantly collaborating and communicating with our partner agencies. Agencies like the Moorpark Police Department, the Ventura County Sheriff's Office, the Office of Emergency Services, and the National Weather Service. And so we generally try to maintain a 48 to 72 hour window of awareness where that information becomes a little more granular, a little easier for us to wrap our head around, and that's when we begin our preparatory planning process. On the left side of the screen here, you'll see an example of what is known as our Plan 2 brush emergency plan. And this is the highest level of preparatory action that we have scripted that we will go into when we anticipate one of these events coming. So beyond the 34 fire stations that exist within Ventura County and our partner agencies, which even increases that number, we will go ahead and upstaff all of these additional resources. This includes an incident management team. It includes additional fire engines, bulldozers, helicopters, hand crews, and a variety of other equipment that allows us to more effectively respond to fires when they start under these wind events. On the right side of the screen, you'll see a fire size, potential, and weather forecasts. And this is another example of intelligence tools that we use to gain awareness and situational awareness as we come into these events. This is a product that's broadcasted out weekly, shared from various partners throughout the state, and it's another example of information that we use to help prepare ourselves. As we move into the specific fire response, so we've come sort of out of the preparatory time, we are now under the event and someone calls 911. This is sort of what you can expect. And not only will you get a robust response from the resources that are dispatched, but very early on, we will likely increase additional resources. And I'll speak to you a little bit about what that looks like in a second. But just to give you an idea of the type of resources responding in on the initial alarm, we have a couple different versions of our fire engines up here on the top left side of the page. These are Type 1 fire engines, and then our specialized wildland firefighting Type 3 engines. Down here in the bottom left, you can see one of our heavy equipment bulldozers, of which we have several of here in the county. And then in the center, you can see one of our hand crews. The Ventura County Fire Department has 4 full-time paid hand crews, staff of 22 people each. And this is sort of one of the fundamental components when you look at navigating the perimeter control aspect of wildland fires. And then on the right side of the screen, you can see 2 aviation assets. The bottom right is one of our Firehawk helicopters that's operated by the Ventura County Aviation Unit, which is staffed by both the fire department and the sheriff's office. And in the top right, you'll see a fixed wing air tanker that drops retardant. And we usually get those through the state or federal partner agencies. And I will tell you, each and every one of those resources is dispatched on a first alarm response for reported brush fire here in the county. What you'll see on the left side of the screen here is what we've referred to as our 1002, which is it's an example, or it is the prescribed resources to respond. And on this far right column, you can see what you get in a Plan 2 brush response. And it's pretty robust. Right side of the screen here, you can see a map of all the variety of resources throughout the county. But I will tell you, it doesn't just stop with those initial resources that request. Our officers are trained to be very aggressive in response to these sorts of fires. And prior to even getting on scene of an incident, 2 things you can expect them to engage in fairly early on. Number 1 is to request additional resources. They're going to make a fire behavior prediction. They're going to assess the threat and the need, and they're going to be requesting those additional resources very early on. And the second, one of the most important things that we can do is they're going to begin evacuation orders. Certainly if the fire is positioned in an area that's going to immediately threaten homes, structures, or infrastructures. So that's a little bit about the threat of wildfire here in the county, the way that we prepare for it in our specific fire response. What I'd like to do next is bring up the Moorpark Police Chief, Nick Odenath, to speak about our relationship as partner agencies and how they engage the evacuation component during fires.
Thank you, Tony. Again, my name's Nick Odenath. I'm the captain with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office and the police chief for the city of Moorpark. The city of Moorpark contracts police services with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. As it relates to fire events, one of the questions we get is, what's our role as a sheriff's office or law enforcement agency during these large fire events? And there's really 2 primary roles that we serve in that capacity. The first is we obviously work very closely with the Ventura County Fire Department as it relates to establishing evacuation zones and actually conducting the evacuations. That is a primary role for the Sheriff's Office during some of these events. The second part is related to loot protection. So oftentimes when there's a large fire event, and people are away from their homes, people will come into the area to try to loot those areas, and we'll provide extra patrol services to prevent that from happening. Now, as a result of learning from a lot of large fire events over the last few years, we have changed some of the ways that we respond to fires in the county. So the Moorpark Police Department and all of Ventura County Sheriff's Office, when we receive a call to our dispatch center of a fire, historically we would have sent those calls directly to the fire department so that they could respond. Now we've changed the way that we do that. So we receive a call to our dispatch center that there's a fire, and whether it's a residential, a brush fire, a car fire, regardless of the type, we notify the Ventura County Fire Department, but we also send a supervisor and a patrol deputy to the scene in the event that it's a fire that's growing quickly and evacuations need to happen immediately. So that is a change that happened about a year ago. In addition, we made one other change as it relates to certain situations where there's a high fire danger. In that particular situation, we'll actually deploy our tactical response team. Our tactical response team is designed and trained to handle large-scale evacuations during fire events. And our tactical response team will be sent out, much like the fire department, to high fire areas when we have, for example, Santa Ana winds, a Santa Ana wind event, to ensure that if we do have a large fire, large brush fire in the area, that we can start evacuation sooner and in a quick manner. Beyond that, when we do have a large fire event, we've done a lot of pre-planning. And so we routinely have meetings with the Ventura County Fire Department, the California Highway Patrol, the Office of Emergency Services, locally the Ventura County Community College District Police Department, to discuss what it'll look like to respond to a large brush fire in and around the Moorpark area. And we'll conduct these tabletop exercises to talk about what traffic control is going to look like during these events, what evacuations might look like, what impacts an evacuation may have on the college. So we're running through these scenarios so that we are more prepared to handle large fires should we have one in the area. And then finally, as it relates to fire evacuations, it's one thing to actually go door to door and make notifications as it relates to an evacuation. But it's another thing as it relates to traffic control. And we've seen this recently, and the Palisades is probably a good recent example where traffic potentially becomes an issue. And so as part of our tabletop exercises and as part of leveraging our mutual aid with the California Highway Patrol, as well as additional resources with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office, we can leverage our traffic units to come in to supplement traffic control in areas where we need to conduct rapid evacuations. And that may look like, for example, on LA Avenue, controlling intersections, calling the train companies and stopping train activity while we're actually conducting large-scale evacuations during these fire events. So those are things, again, we're learning from prior fire events and implementing change here locally to ensure that when we do have a large fire event, we're prepared and have the resources to be able to address it. And then with that, I would like to go ahead and introduce Andrew Dowd back up to the podium, PIO with the Ventura County Fire Department.
Thank you very much, Captain Onath. Thank you again, everybody, for allowing us to be here tonight. What I want to talk to you about is the importance of being prepared. I think a lot of us feel like we're ready for that next emergency, that next disaster, but then when it strikes, we find ourselves potentially behind the curve. So what I've been trying to do with this next part of the discussion is discuss with you the importance of being prepared and some concrete ways that you can accomplish that. As somebody who lives in the community, most of us that work for the Ventura County Fire Department live here. I live in a high hazard fire area. We've had to evacuate our home numerous times for fires. And so I'll try to share with you, too, some of the things that my family has done to help be prepared and make sure that we are ready in case of an emergency. Ready, Set, Go is a program that we utilize to help build a resilient community. We want a community that's resilient not only for wildfires, especially now that we see the weather that we've had and the rains, but also to be prepared for things like earthquakes, floods, and other disasters. Despite the recent rain, now is a great time to think about preparedness and things that you can do to be prepared. So I want to take a second and just go through some of these steps and talk about what it is that you can do, what Ready, Set, Go actually means. Well, ready is the preparedness. That's what we should be doing now. Figuring out how we can prepare ourselves and how we can prepare our homes in the face of a potential disaster. And in a little bit, we'll have our Fire Marshal, Joe Morelli, talk about things like home hardening. But being prepared means having a plan and knowing what we're going to do. So that's the ready part. We'll get into some more details about that here in a moment. The set of Ready, Set, Go is what we do when we know there's an emergency or about to be an emergency, when we know that there's a threat of wildfire, when we have these red flags or these PDSs, the particularly dangerous situations. We are aware, we're ready to go, we're ready to evacuate should a fire impact our area. And then finally, go. That's following evacuation orders. That's taking the advice of Captain Odenath, and when the evacuation order is given, evacuating immediately. One of the things that we saw from the recent mountain fire was the need to rapidly evacuate a large community. And that happened quickly and safely. I think one of the testaments to our agency and the partner agencies that responded to that incident, our partnership with VCSO and the other law enforcement officers that were there and agencies that were there, was our ability to get people out of harm's way and get them out quickly. That's the definition. That's the picture of a resilient community and a community that's ready for disasters. So for those of you here in the audience, those of you watching at home, we do have a brochure that's available. Excuse me, it's available on our website as well at vcfd.org, and it provides you with a wealth of information about things you can do about these specific emergencies and how you can be prepared. So ready, what does that mean? Ready means that you have a plan that you're ready to enact. The question you have to answer is, what will I do when? I'll use myself as an example. I work at our headquarters in Thousand Oaks. My wife is a speech therapist and works at a school in Oxnard, and my daughter is frequently home because she has a hybrid school that she goes to. So we could find ourselves in a red flag situation, a PDS, and a wildfire that breaks out, and I am in Thousand Oaks, my wife is in Oxnard, my daughter is at home. The cell phone towers go down, we can no longer communicate. Now what do we do? Well, we have a plan. We've selected 2 separate meeting areas. We know where we're going to meet. If we're not at one of those areas, we'll be at a second area. My wife and I have a plan of where we're going to go and how we're going to get there. My daughter has a plan of how she's going to get to that area, and what she's going to do as she continues to try to wait for us. We have ideas about how we're going to communicate if the cell phone towers are down, or what our plan is going to be if communications break down. A lot of times, you don't have time to think about a plan when it actually is happening. So having a plan and knowing what you're going to do when a disaster strikes is perhaps one of the most important things that I can recommend in preparing to be ready for any disaster. The second thing is to make a kit. Now, what we saw in the mountain fire was there were families that had to evacuate within minutes. So you need to know 2 things. First of all, what is it that I'm going to take with me? So again, using myself as an example, we've gone through our entire house, and I have a large plastic bin for every room. And in every room, we have defined what it is that we're going to take. And it'll all fit inside the bin. So if we're home, we can easily pack what we're going to take. We know the priority of what's important, and we can evacuate with those things. By identifying it ahead of time, you don't have to wait for that disaster to frantically figure out what you're going to take. Again, this is just what me and my family do, and I would recommend that you examine your own situation and figure out what works best for you. The second thing we do is we have a kit. And in that kit, we have things like spare glasses that my wife and my daughter wear, some medications that we might need, some basic food supplies, a few power bars, some couple bottles of water, basic first aid kit, things that we will need if they have to evacuate. So I know that if my daughter is home by herself and we can't get to her, she's going to have food, she's going to have water, she's going to have the glasses that she needs. She can grab that pack and head to the area that we're going to go meet. You have to consider your own situations. Do you have pets? Do you have family members that might have mobility concerns? What are your plans for them? When these incidents strike, yes, the fire department will be there. Yes, our partners in law enforcement will be there. But we may have a large group of people that we have to address quickly. And so being self-reliant, having a plan, having a kit, and having addressed all of your particular concerns is what you can do to help keep you and your family safe. So, we call it when-then thinking, and that's what I encourage. When there's a disaster and when this happens, then I will do X, Y, and Z. So, another really important thing is to have a plan for how you're going to stay informed. staying informed both as, let's say, for example, as a red flag weather event or a potential flood warning like we had recently in recent days, staying informed is incredibly important. Knowing what's happening around you, having good situational awareness. There's a few resources that are available to help you do that. The first one that I recommend is vcalert.org. Register at vcalert.org. If you're not already registered, whatever you're doing right now, register at vcalert.org. That is a system by where you will register your address and your phone number and email address and be notified if evacuation orders are issued. It's what the Sheriff's Department and the Sheriff's and the OES, Ventura County OES utilizes to make announcements about evacuation. So register there today. When an emergency happens, even during the recent flood warnings that we had, vcemergency.com is your most reliable source for information. Whenever we set up and are managing an incident, that is where we send the latest information about what's happening in that incident, evacuation notices and warnings, where evacuation centers are located, large animal rescue centers. The best and most reliable information is at vcemergency.com. We maintain our own social media channels at Ventura County Fire Department, and although we can't update as regularly as vcemergency.com might, the information that we provide on our social media channels is trustworthy, accurate, and reliable. You can always rely on what we publish there. So following us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, or on Nextdoor. Those are the 4 platforms we typically publish emergency information on. There are a number of commercially available tracking apps that you can also utilize. Watch Duty is one that is heavily used, and the information that they provide is, for the most part, accurate. I can't validate the authenticity of every single thing that they publish. However, it is a great resource if you want to track fires and see what's happening, but I strongly recommend you verify any information that's issued at vcemergency.com. And now is the time. Now is the time to download those apps. Now is the time to visit those websites, mark them in your browser, set them up in your phone so that when a disaster strikes, you're already prepared. Then we get the order. It's time to evacuate. What do we want you to do? It's simple. Go. Leave and evacuate when orders are given. As of today, you should have a plan for where it is that you're going to go. When you have to evacuate, where are you going to go? Do you have a friend? Do you have family nearby that you can go to? Are you going to rely on going to an evacuation shelter? Know where you're going to go before an emergency. Do you have family or friends that will need access? We mentioned before about mobility challenges. If that's going to be a concern for your family, plan ahead for that. Evacuation shelters are rapidly set up in the county. The group that's responsible for evacuation shelters, when they anticipate a red flag condition, when they anticipate a flood alert, that team has pre-established locations that they have already designated and can activate the need as soon as the need is available. And the locations of those evacuation shelters will be made available on vcemergency.com. If you do have to evacuate to an evacuation shelter, please understand that, like I said, it's announced quickly. They will have plenty of resources there available for you. And one really important thing is if you have small pets, they are allowed inside of our evacuation shelter. So that can be part of your plan if necessary. However, if you have large animals, many people in this community that own large animals, horses, etc., you should plan ahead for where you're going to transport those animals and how you're going to get them there. There's a video on information about that at the VC Animal Services website. You can check it out right away. So to answer this question, are you prepared? I hope so. And I hope the information here tonight has been helpful to help you get there. A few things you can do right now. Go to our website, vcfd.org, download the Ready, Set, Go guide, and go through that to make sure you followed all the steps. One of the things that is in that guide, I happen to have it here, is an emergency kit list. Things you can put on an emergency kit, an emergency action plan, numbers and notifications. So very helpful information for you. Preload those apps that I was mentioning before. Look at getting Watch Duty. Load up and bookmark vcemergency.com. Register at vcalert.org. Make sure you've talked about your plans with your family. If you have a loved one that has mobility concerns that may be out of the area, talk to them. If you have friends that live nearby, hey, if we have to evacuate, we're going to go to your house. If you have to evacuate, come to ours. Have a plan and discuss it with your family and friends. And consider what your circumstances might be. I can't address every single potential circumstance here, but what we want is for a resilient community that is prepared to respond in the face of any type of disaster. As we like to say, now is the time to prepare so that you don't have to panic. So thank you very much for your time. I'd like to now welcome up Fire Marshal Joe Morelli from Ventura County Fire Department to talk a little bit about Zone 0 and home hardening.
Thank you, Andrew. Good evening. So there's a lot more that I could talk about that would take more time than we have, but I'm going to highlight a couple things tonight because I think it's on a lot of people's minds. It's information that's already out there. Zone 0, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that is and how you can harden your home as well. So some of this is really just a continuation of some of the topics already brought up. The fire chief brought up that the different things that affect wildfire behavior, it's fuel, weather, topography. We can't really do much about the weather individually. We can't do much about the topography. The fuel, there is something we can do about that, specifically around your home. So I'm going to talk about defensible space, but I don't think I have to say really it's usually within a year of a major wildfire that you almost don't have to say how destructive they are. After you get past that year mark, people forget, they move on to something else. But as we all know, we've just had some catastrophic wildfires, and that's part of what led to the development of the Zone 0 regulations. So after the Palisades and Eaton fires, there was over 16,000 structures lost, 31 lives. There's going to be change at the statewide level, and I think this last year we saw something like over 100 wildfire-related bills. A couple of those, one of them had to do with, there were bills and then there were executive orders. So after the Palisades and Eaton fires, the governor issued an executive order to speed up the release of some maps that CAL FIRE was developing, the updated very high and high fire hazard area maps. Those maps were updated this year for the county as required by state law. And what we saw is that based on fuel, weather, topography, and the computer modeling that CAL FIRE has, we saw the areas increase significantly. I think we went from approximately 60,000 up to 90,000 properties in the county that are in either a moderate high or very high fire hazard area. And those are areas that are identified as being at higher risk to wildfire. If you go to the VCFD's website, you can get information. We have the maps up on there, so if you're wondering if you're in one of those areas and whether defensible space laws apply to you, whether the upcoming Zone 0 regulations apply to you, you can go there or you can contact us and we can provide that information if you're not able to find it. So I'm going to move on here. So I want to talk about first, what is defensible space? This is not new. We've had a program in Ventura County going back to the 1930s. Initially, the defensible space we're looking at is fuel reduction area around the structure. It was 30 feet. Then it went up to 60 feet. And then in the 90s, it was 100 feet. But what we found, not just we, but CAL FIRE, the organizations that do research, is that there's still a vulnerable area, and it's the first 5 feet around a structure. So you can reduce your fuel 100 feet out from the structure, 30 feet out, 20 feet. But if you have vegetation right up against the structure, it increases the probability of that vegetation igniting when embers land on it, and the probability of that fire spreading to the structure. So the governor, one of the executive orders was to speed up the development of the Zone 0 regulations, which the State Board of Forestry was already working on to release before the end of the year. So defensible space is exactly what the name implies. When our firefighters go out and there's simply not enough, we simply don't have enough firefighters. When you have a major wind-driven wildfire, how effective they can be, sometimes it's just dependent on the wind, the topography, the fuel that's out there. Those all factor into it. But also, some of the things that they're doing when they go out there are things that you can do at your house ahead of time. Our firefighters take the time when they have it to throw furniture away from the structure, to clear vegetation. But how many structures can they actually get to? So it's really critical for us and for the community to be engaged in this. And we do have a community that works very closely with us, and we get 99% compliance on our annual inspections of 19,000 properties. There are more properties than we inspect in our high fire hazard areas. As I mentioned, there's 90,000. We inspect the 20,000 or 19,000 that are typically within 500 feet of a watershed, so those are identified as higher risk areas. But if you are anywhere near the watershed, if you're in a moderate high or very high fire hazard area, I just want to encourage everyone to do what you can do to protect your home, because when the fire comes, even though we have the best mutual aid system arguably in the world, we're outstanding in California, you simply can't have enough resources to defend the number of homes that need to be defended. So I'm going to take you through a little bit more about what the different zones are for defensible space. I don't think this information is new, but again, if you want more information, it's on our website. So the whole concept, it's pretty simple. When you look at this structure, the before picture, it's actually not the worst. There's some properties that we see out there that you just wonder how they're still standing. It's probably because a wildfire didn't come through that area. But you never know where you're going to have a start, and it depends on where the wind is blowing. There's some properties we look at it and we just say that's just not defensible, or it's not as defensible as it could be. You look at the picture on the right after the defensible space and vegetation has been removed. Our firefighters see that, and they see something that is more defensible, where they can take a stand, but that's not always the case. I want to talk a little bit about, so we're talking about defensible space, but there's something that's equally as important, and it's the structure itself. You can have defensible space, but if an ember gets into your attic, the probability of losing that structure is about 85%. Once you have ignition in the attic, unless you are fortunate enough to have a fire engine parked in your front driveway, it's an 85% chance that structure will be lost. There's a very simple solution to that. There's wire mesh that could be put onto attic vents that's either 1/8 or 1/16 inch in size, and it costs approximately $100 to $200 to put that wire mesh over your attic vents if you don't have it right now. You want to keep the fire out of your attic. You want to keep it out of the structure. The other thing to keep in mind is that part of having a plan, it's having a plan for how you're going to leave your structure. So if you keep your trash cans up against your structure, if you keep patio furniture against your structure, move everything as far away from the structure as possible, especially if you have a Santa Ana wind event coming. It's a red flag warning day. And the other thing is you can have the most hardened structure with the best defensible space, but when you get embers that are traveling 1-2 miles ahead of a fire front, if you leave your door open, or even worse, if you have skylights and they're openable, those are like ember catchers on your roof. You have to close your windows, close your doors, close your garage door. There's just some very simple things that you can do to reduce the risk and increase the chance of your structure surviving. So I just want to talk a little bit more about home hardening. There's on our website, vcfd.org, there is a link in there that covers the It's a headwater economic study that identifies the least costly improvements that you can make to your home to increase the survivability of the structure. The attic vents and the wire mesh is one of them. The defensible space is actually the most economical. It's the cheapest, one of the most effective things. Next to that, get your attic vents. Make sure your attic vents have the right wire mesh on it so you don't lose your home because you didn't invest $100 or $200 to do that. The other thing is wood siding, typically not good. For a long time now, I think most people have gone away from wood shake roofs. It's the worst kind of roof you can have. So we're not seeing a lot of that out there. But there are windows you can upgrade to, your fire resistive siding. The other thing to consider is, I'm sure there's someone out there watching, I've dealt with it myself, that lives in an area where you have had your insurance coverage dropped. And the insurance industry they're not paying attention to what we're saying in the fire service. They have their own risk modeling. But what I can share with you is that the insurance industry they're looking at the probability of loss. And the more that you can do with your home, there's a list of 10 different home hardening items that can be done on the California Insurance Commissioner's Office website. The things I'm telling you are within those 10 items that you can improve on your home that will either potentially get you a small insurance discount or even better, allow you to keep your insurance and not be moved over into the FAIR plan. So even though we have no control of that in the fire service and what your insurance is or isn't, I just feel it's my responsibility to share with you that what you do to your structure can help you potentially with your insurance. So again, more of the information on our website. The 3 different zones two that have existed is the 100-foot zone between 30 and 100 feet from the structure. What we're trying to do there is get the fire to move, especially if you have large trees. You're trying to get it to move from the trees down to the ground and to reduce the fuel load so that by the time it hits that structure, it's the fuel load and the heat intensity is low enough that it's not going to ignite the structure. But as I mentioned, if everything is good from 5 to 100 feet, but you have fuels right up against the structure, and you have direct flame contact, it's not going to help. So I want to talk just a little bit more about this Zone 0. The governor's executive order requires that the state develop these regulations and release them by December 31st of this year. And what does that mean? It means that for anything new construction, anything within 5 feet of the structure, they're still finalizing the regulations. They started at, it's going to be non-combustible zone. You can have nothing within 5 feet of the structure. It immediately takes effect for new construction, but in Ventura County, it doesn't really affect our county because we have been doing this for new construction since 2019. We started at it as a ember-resistant zone, and then it later became a non-combustible zone. So that's, again, for new construction. So the state's really, they're doing something there that we've already been doing. The difficult part about this is that 60,000 properties within the county, several thousand obviously here in Moorpark as well, are going to be required by state law within 3 years to comply with this new Zone 0 regulation. We're going to find out in the next, I'd say, month or two on what this looks like from the state. I don't think it's going to be a non-combustible zone where anything that can burn in all vegetation within 5 feet of the structure has to be removed. It looks like they're going to allow for some limitations, maybe with the size of plants, or it can be just in potted plants, but it's gonna be significant. Regardless of whether someone is doing that or not, because it's required, the insurance industry has already been requiring this for people to either keep their insurance or get discounts. So they're kind of ahead of us on that. So the first 5 feet around the structure, I would just say follow our department's social media, because we will have information out on there once we know what the regulations are. And take a look at our website and follow it in the next couple months. I don't want to tell you all the specifics of what this is going to be yet, because it's still changing right now. So anyways, let us know if you have any questions on that. The zone 1 and 2 is nothing new. Zone 1, 5 to 30 feet from the structure. We want to have spacing between plants. We don't want them interconnected. Limbing up trees so that the fire doesn't get up into the trees from the ground vegetation. And then 30 to 100 feet, we just want to limit the overall amount of fuel load. So let me see if I have anything else here for you. Oh yeah, so when will Zone 0 begin? The state responsibility areas and LRA, it's currently required right now in Ventura County, and has been for the last 6 years. For existing homes, the requirements will as soon as the requirements take effect for new construction, there will be a 3-year timeline for any one of those 60,000 properties in the county to get into compliance with those requirements. And for real estate transfer, when someone is selling a property, the Zone 0 requirements will apply immediately upon release from the State Board of Forestry. So if you're selling a home in, let's say, 6 months, and your property isn't in compliance with the Zone 0 regulations, part of what the law requires is for the fire department to do an inspection, to issue a report notifying both the buyer and the seller of whether property is in compliance or not, and then ultimately to follow up to ensure compliance. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Battalion Chief, Joe Williams, who heads our wildland unit, and I'll be available afterwards for any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So my name's Joe Williams. I'm the Wildland Battalion Chief for the Ventura County Fire Department, and I'm going to give you an overview of our wildland unit, and then I'm going to give you a more in-depth overview of our vegetation management program as well. So our wildland unit overview is going to consist of, we have four hand crews with 22 members per hand crew. We have 3 dozer operators, and each of the operators has a dozer swamper to assist them as well. And they operate numerous types of heavy equipment like our dozers. And we have our vegetation management program, which consists of 1 fire captain, a pre-fire engineer, and a VMP project coordinator. And when our hand crews and our dozers aren't fighting fire, they're working together to create and maintain our defensible spaces and our fuel breaks in and around the county. So what is vegetation management? Vegetation management is a proactive approach to reducing wildfire risk and improving community safety through strategic fuels management. So what does that mean? That means that Ventura County Fire Department is out there. We're looking at our different fuel beds, our current fuel breaks, and we're also looking where can we put a fuel break in a certain fuel bed to slow down that fire's progression once we do get a fire start, allowing our engines and our hand crews and our dozers to get in there and make a stop on the fire. That's what vegetation management is. So how do we evaluate our vegetation management projects, and what are we looking for when we're looking to plan a new project? We want to analyze our fuel beds and our topography. We also want to consider fire history. So how old is that fuel bed, or how old is that vegetation? Is it 20 years old? Is it 50 years old? Is it 100 years old? So we want to also consider that. We're also utilizing modern fire modeling software, so we can place a fire anywhere in the county. We can provide some weather inputs. We can apply heat, wind, and things like that, and that will show us where that fire is going to move towards a certain community. We also want to look at our landowner agreements. We have to have a landowner agreement, whether it's public or private, before we go in and do a fuels management project. And then we also have to adhere to CEQA, which is the California Environmental Quality Act. It's a state law that we have to follow when we're looking to plan or when we're actually performing our fuel management projects. So our methods for fuel breaks and fuel reduction. Once we have a project plan and we're going to be going out there and doing the work, what does that look like for us? Up here you can see a picture of one of our fire control workers putting fire on the ground intentionally. This is a prescribed fire method of creating a fuel break, and this is putting good fire back on the landscape. The other method that we'll talk about is mowing and masticating, and then we'll talk about prescribed grazing as well. So prescribed fire, why do we use it? We use it for a lot of different reasons, but the main reason is, like I mentioned before, is putting that good fire back on the landscape, and we're doing that in a relatively controlled environment. We put in control lines, we know where it's going to go. We perform prescribed fire operations under very specific conditions. That's called prescription. And then we utilize that prescribed fire to remove ladder fuels, removes that old dead wood that's lying on the ground that's going to contribute to the increased intensity of a wildland fire. It also basically hits the reset button on a fuel bed, which is something that we want to do. Mowing and masticating is another method that we can use to maintain our fuel breaks. So you can see here the masticator is that big excavator on the left-hand lower part of the slide. It's got a big masticating head on it. It's reaching out as far as it can. It's removing a lot of that fuel off of that fuel break, allowing us to potentially create a 50-foot wide, even a wider fuel break, slowing that wildfire progression when it does happen. We also have a large lawnmower, basically. It mows down a lot of similar to what our masticator does, but it's used for lighter type flashy fuels. So these are two methods that we can use to perform fuels projects. The other method is prescribed grazing. These are our four-legged furry friends that we like to use on a lot of our projects. You may have seen them out there before. These little guys do a great job abating the lighter fuels, the invasive star thistle, mustard, and grasses, and they're very light on the terrain as well, which we like. And we typically get good PR. Everyone likes to see those things eating and doing a good job. So I'm going to talk about a couple projects that we have in and around the Moorpark community. This is our hitch fuel reduction project. We started this back in, I believe it's 2020. And you can see here the red line that goes around. It's just south of Hitch Road, north of Priscilla. That red line is a 50-foot wide fuel break around that fuel bed. We used our heavy equipment and our masticating equipment to open that up to 50-foot wide. The green shaded area is about 13 acres of prescribed grazing. So we brought our goats in and we grazed off that 13 acres. So our hope is that we'll reduce the fuel loading in this particular area. That way, when there is a wildland fire, we're reducing that risk to the community by removing some of that dead fuel and allowing a safer fuel break. This is our Long Canyon fuel reduction project. This is in the planning phases right now. This is in the area of Wood Ranch off of Long Canyon. And you can see here, using the methods I described earlier, the green line paralleling the homes is prescribed grazing. It's about, I think, 30 acres. And then the pink area, that's prescribed fire. It's about 90 acres. And you can see some mastication lines around that as well. We're looking to perform this project in spring of 2026. So that concludes my presentation on vegetation management. Hopefully it was insightful and you guys learned a few things. I'm going to call up Captain Pat Kelly to go over lithium-ion battery safety. Thank you.
Thank you. As Joe said, I'm Captain Pat Kelly. I work at Station 50 in the city of Camarillo. It's our hazmat station. And tonight I was asked to come here to talk about lithium-ion batteries and how we can use these lithium-ion batteries in our everyday life and continue to do it safely and be aware of what the potentials are when we do use these batteries and where they are in our everyday life. So far tonight, we have been talking about threats outside. We've been talking about threats on the wildland. And now we're going to kind of move inside and talk about what the potential is and what we need to be aware of, and what we can do to interact safely with these batteries and protect ourselves. As I said earlier, these batteries are everywhere, and they're generally safe. And they're increasing in where we're going to see them because of green initiatives and because of the drive to make a cleaner environment and have a clean environment. So they could be in our handheld communication devices, whether it be phones, tablets, laptops, things like that, micro-mobility devices, scooters, skateboards, hoverboards, the kind that elderly people use to get around when they're lacking mobility or less than as mobile as they once were, and all the way up to cars, trucks, planes, trains, and then grid energy storage, right? They're a great option when we're trying to store power that can be reused later and energized into the grid. So they are everywhere and they are generally safe, but when they do go bad, they go bad in a pretty spectacular way. And that's what I was brought here to talk about, is what we can do to recognize when they may go bad, what we can do to prevent that, and how we keep ourselves safe with these batteries, as prolific as they are in our homes. One big thing that needs to be pointed out is the batteries are very, very safe, but once they're damaged, like I said, they go bad. They do not like to be crushed, overcharged, undercharged. A lot of times the market's flooded with knowingly counterfeit batteries because they are such a good profit. And when they do catch fire, they catch fire very rapidly, and they can cause a lot of damage. And in addition to catching fire, there's a scenario where they may overheat and produce a lot of vapor, and that vapor is potentially explosive. And if it's not on fire, it could fill that compartment, whatever that compartment is, with those flammable gases and present a real problem for the homeowner or for us driving. So this is a video that came from the Fire Research Safety Institute. And what they did here, if you look in this back corner, is they have a scooter. This is a scenario that plays out on a daily basis almost in New York City. They bring these scooters inside. They charge them in their living space. And so this was to replicate what could happen when that's done. They intentionally overcharge that battery on that scooter, and you'll see what the result is in the video here. So you can see there was a huge increase in the vapor production. That vapor, like I said, it's a flammable vapor. It found a competent ignition source, and it basically exploded. One of the things that also needs to be mentioned is that when these batteries go into what's called thermal runaway, this process of self-heating and self-propagation, those fires can't be put out with the normal means that we would use. They don't adhere to the normal physics using the fire triangle. It is a chemical chain reaction that once initiated is going to continue until that material is done. So what do we do? One of the biggest things that we can do is research what we're trying to purchase. Be a good informed consumer. It really is going to take a whole community approach to mitigate these hazards, to recognize the potential and to mitigate them. And it's going to take us in the fire service as well as the homeowners and informed consumers to protect the community. So take the time. If you go on Amazon as I did a couple of months back, my wife wanted to replace the Dyson battery on her stick vacuum. And you could see a huge variance in price on Amazon. And there, I think it was from like $70 up to $120. And she almost bought that $70 battery, as most of us would, especially when we're trying to save some money. But I'd urge you, make sure that if you're going to do that, that you know where that battery is made, you know how it was made, and you're looking for a stamp or some kind of nationally recognized testing institute like UL, Underwriters Laboratory, something like that. Something that says that that battery has met a minimum standard, it has been tested, and it is good to go. And again, many products are knowingly sold online, knowingly counterfeit, and they're put out there because there is such a good profit margin on them. And you'll see batteries that are sold, and they're disguised to look like reputable batteries. And when you tear them apart, they're very substandard construction. They have knowingly lacking in some of the safety protocols that are supposed to be in those batteries to make sure that they don't have any problems. When you do elect to buy that whatever you're going to buy, always make sure that you understand what that product needs, whether it be an iPad, laptop, scooter, bike, whatever it is. Take the time to get familiar with that. Read what the manufacturer's recommendations are. Charge that battery with the cables and the blocks and things like that that come with that product. A lot of times we shortcut that. You know, we need a charging cable for our phone, so we buy one at the gas station. And then we notice, you know, how much cheaper it is when I buy it there. Well, there's a reason for that. That wasn't what's necessarily intended to be paired with that product, so we need to be on the lookout for that. If you need to replace a charger, make sure you buy a charger from that product's manufacturer. So replace like with like. Don't go out and buy those secondhand things that are cheap, because they may not work with that device and they may not pair well. When you are going to charge your devices, go ahead and charge it on a hard surface. Again, I would be very cautious and follow manufacturer's recommendation of where you're going to charge that thing, because some of them say don't charge in your bed, don't charge in your bedroom. I remember years ago when airsoft guns were a thing, that a lot of kids were charging their airsoft gun batteries, which were lithium-ion batteries, and they were doing it improperly, and we were having fires as a result. So make sure you understand that. And once that device is charged, take it off the charger. We see that often where, well, I'm guilty of it too. When I go into my garage, my power tool batteries and things like that, a lot of times they're sitting on the charger. You don't want to do that. Once that battery takes that charge, it's not like those old NiCad batteries and things like that where you had to worry about battery memories and things. That battery will keep a good charge even when it's not constantly charging, so you don't have to worry about that. And finally, one of the things that it's really imperative that we all understand, again, with that whole community approach, is when we're done, when these batteries reach their end of life, we need to be good stewards and make sure that we do the proper thing and dispose of them the right way. When these batteries started really being introduced into the market, we had a huge uptick nationwide of trash truck fires, transfer center fires, where they go and sort the trash and repackage it for the landfill. And this is going to continue. And the more that we're out in front of people and can talk about, one, that these batteries are great, but also what the downfall and what the potentials are, and really have an informed community that know that when these things go, they do go bad, and that we need to be good stewards and make sure that we recycle them or dispose of them properly. And probably the best way to do that currently is there's a website called Call to Recycle. It's right there, www.call2recycle. It was a collaborative collaborative effort between the big battery manufacturers once they realized that there was nobody to call, and they put together this service so you can find a clearinghouse, a disposal center, something like that that can assist you when you have a battery that needs to be recycled and needs to be disposed of. So it's a great opportunity to find out where those are, and again, when you're planning what you're going to purchase, also plan what you're going to do when that thing needs to be recycled, and being informed, and just recognize that these hazards are out there and they need to be mitigated, and we need to be responsible. Like I said, this whole night we've been talking about how hazards that are outside our homes. Well, we have a ton of these hazards that are inside our homes, and most of us don't even know that they're there. Go ahead, sir.
So, I have two Harleys.
Yes.
Plug-in chargers.
Right.
My wife drives her car so seldom. Her car is charged. She's on a charger. And, anything else out there, but should those things be unplugged?
Sure.
Not on 24/7?
So the question was for anybody that's live streaming. This gentleman has two motorcycles that are on trickle chargers in his garage, and a car that his wife uses that's also on a trickle charger. The short answer is different technologies. Okay, I would imagine those are lead acid batteries and not lithium ion batteries. Yeah. Lead acid batteries are probably okay. Again, anything that you're going to do like that, you would want to check with the manufacturer's recommendations. One of the things that you need to be aware of with lead acid batteries, when they fail or grow dendrites, which if you think of it, it's like icicles on those plates. When they short between the battery, then they produce hydrogen sulfide. Okay, so that is a negative byproduct of that battery going bad. So if you ever go in your garage and you smell something that smells like sewer gas, be aware that might be that hydrogen sulfide, which is poisonous. So,
And obviously our house has got batteries in every one of the fire detectors.
right.
And I know occasionally we obviously have to change it. But
Right.
usually I have to change the whole thing, including the battery.
Right. So the further on that question was the smoke detectors and the batteries that are located within the house. So everything is going to be in context. I mean, you saw the explosive potential of that e-bike or that scooter. Those batteries are little, right, that are going to be as that backup in your smoke detector. Most of the smoke detectors, they'll do like a 5-year sealed battery. But then again, you're going to have to think of disposal. But yeah, if you took inventory of your house, I mean, on my person right now, I've got a flashlight in my pocket that has a lithium ion battery. I have a cell phone in my other pocket. You know, I have a watch on my wrist. Those are all lithium ion batteries. If you really took stock of how many of these are in your house that you may or may not know about, and to go one further, when we do buy these things and they will age out, make sure that you check with like the consumer, the recall places that list the current recalls. I was looking at one earlier while I was getting ready to come up, and there was a Tesla Powerwall that's been recalled, that they were sold between, I think, 2020 and 2022, where there's, I think, 16,000 units. But you heard last week on the news, they were talking about these battery backup banks, you know, for your cell phone, that there was a bunch that were recalled. And so just stay on top of that stuff. And if you have those things, make sure you check in and check frequently if they have been recalled or if there's anything that might be concerning to you. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to PIO Andrew Dowd, and if we have any questions, I think he's going to address those. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Captain Kelly. Just want to take a quick moment and thank all of our panel for joining us here today. We're very honored to be here, and so thank you for sharing all of this really valuable and important information. A special thank you to VCSO Captain Odenath, and really appreciate our partnership, and thank you so much for being here and for supporting our efforts, as always. Another huge thank you to the city of Moorpark and the staff here that has done a tremendous job at helping bring this facility together, to bring this live stream together for us. We can't thank you enough for everything all of you have done to make this happen. We really value our partnership, and we appreciate being your local fire department. So thank you all very, very much. And finally, I want to thank the audience at home. Thank you for taking the time. I hope this information has been valuable for all of you. I would encourage you to visit our website again at vcfd.org for any additional information. We didn't see any questions come in on the live stream, but our email address is piofire@ventura.org. That goes directly to me, and I'll be able to see your questions and answer them as they come up. So you can always email us at piofire.com. Again, I'd like to say thank you. As your fire agency, our mission is to protect life and property. And the men and women that serve in the Ventura County Fire Department take that mission very seriously, and we appreciate the opportunity to serve our community. So thank you very much.